Seni punya nyawa. Seni punya kuasa. Seni mencetuskan perasaan yang tiada taranya. Seni merupakan pemacu negara. Seni menyatukan kita dalam meraihkan dan menyalurkan tenaga kita ke haluan baharu. Pelaburan demi kesenian Malaysia adalah pelaburan demi jiwa kita. Seni mewakili sejarah terindah dan masa depan kita. Cendana mendorong kita ke hadapan. Dan dari sini, kita bangkit.
Hello everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Cendana Open Arts classes brought to you by Cendana. My name is Sarah Ame and I'll be the moderator for this session. The Cendana Open Arts classes are a series of art classes under Cendana's Arts in the City program held from 29 October to 21st November. The OAC features the country's renowned art practitioners to share with you their insights and expertise in their field. If you'd like to find out more about OAC and Arts in the City, do visit www.basketl.com.my/AITC. Now, before we begin, let's go through some house rules for this session. All right, okay. So to ensure clear audio quality, we will mute your audio and video throughout the session, except for the question and answer session. We will also, so please feel free to share your question in the chat box and I will put forth your question during the Q&A. Please respect all participants throughout the session and please introduce yourself in the chat box. We will also appreciate your support in filling in our survey feedback form. Again, the link will be given in the chat box. Please avoid using crass language, unconstructive feedback, and or leaving spam comments. Failure to respect the session, the organizer reserves the right to exclude the attendee from further participating in the session. All right. Good morning, everybody. So we have quite an interesting session today. Our session today is called Exploring Borneo Beadwork with Eleanor Goroh. Before I introduce Eleanor, just a brief introduction on our instructor today. Eleanor is a self-taught artist and a cultural worker based between Kota Kinabalu and Krabi, who melds different artistic practices of indigenous peoples into her work. Grounded in community-based collaboration, continuous learning and engagement with the vitality of traditional arts and contemporary textures, Eleanor pays careful attention to indigenous materials, motifs, and instruments that creates work that traverses time and mediums. Her most recent work, Out of Borneo, features beadwork that incorporates traditional seeds and roots with modern beads, to chantings and poetry accompanied by the turali, nose flute, to reading, jaw harp, and sompoton, the mouth organ. All right, so let's give a warm welcome to Eleanor, everyone. Hi, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, I'm good. So glad you'll be able to join us today. So Eleanor's joining us from Krabi, Thailand today.
Yeah, not Krabi actually, Pai.
Pai, oh my goodness, yes, Pai.
Yeah, the mountains.
Yeah, so she's in Pai right now, my bad. So before we start our session today, I'd like to get everybody to turn on their cameras and we're going to take a group photo with Eleanor right before she begins her session. So can we get everybody to turn on their cameras? Okay, so I'm going to cue everyone. Feel free to freestyle and do any of your own signature poses. Okay, smile to the camera, everyone. Camera 1, smile. 3, 2, 1. Camera 2. And camera 3. Okay, awesome. Thanks, everyone. Okay, I won't take too much of your time, Eleanor. Coming live to us from Pai, I'll hand over the floor to you to start your session.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Hello, everybody. Selamat pagi. Good morning. I'm glad you can join me today for this open arts class. I'm very excited to share this session with you. It's also a very opening class for me after being away from home for the past year and a half. It's been interesting times lately. Okay, I have some slides ready. We have this to show, yeah, Sarah?
Sorry, just give me 2 seconds. I have the slides here with.
Yeah, exploring Borneo beadworks is what we're gonna do today. We'll share with you my process for the past decade, learning about my cultural heritage and finding ways to share it with others by using art as my medium to pass down the knowledge or tell the stories that I recently acquired myself. Okay, so this is one of, okay, next slide. This is a collage. I title it Organized Chaos. This is how I feel when I was exploring and learning about beads. As you can see in the picture, it needs to be arranged one by one, like from all the collection that I have, and we need to select each before we can create our new strings. This is also quite a metaphor for how this class flow will going to be. First, we will collect our knowledge that we're going to share, and then we're going to select our beads, and then we're going to create our form of string expression. Okay. So there'll be 3 sessions in this class. One is to tell about Borneo beads and what it is, what it means, cultural heritage and contemporary practice. And then after that, we will go to the more practical side of things, where we will explore the beads that we have and write about them and talk about them and create bead strings and poetry writing. And then in the end of the class, to relax a little bit, we will use our beads and talk about singing and dancing. So, okay. Okay, just a little bit, very quick map here. In my travels, when I say I am from Borneo, usually I have to give a little bit of a geography and history lesson where this island is, having to be an island that is bordering with 3 countries, 4 if you include the seas with the Philippines. So it is it is the biggest island in Southeast Asia, and it is where the tallest mountain is. This is where I come from. Okay. Okay, I would like to share before the class starts just a little bit of how I started to explore Borneo beads. It started with a conference and a book. It is not knowledge that I grew up with. It wasn't what we were taught in school for our arts and cultural knowledge. And it is just very recent. You can see in the picture here, that is the inaugural, the first ever Borneo International Beads Conference that was held in Miri, Sarawak in 2010. Yeah, in Borneo, we love our beads so much that we have a conference so we can gather around and talk about it. Sort of what I would like to share with you today. And also a book that that was written by Sarawak beads curator, Madam Heidi Munan. And in this book, my favorite quote that I read was, she said, not trying to address big issues. After all, beads are small things. after this humble quote, she then continued to host international conference, continued to make books and telling stories, and until today still continue collecting beads and beading. So I find it very inspiring to see small things, but that can carry big matters. Okay. So from this conference and this book, the summary that I get, or the understanding that I get, is beads is a collective world history and heritage. And in Borneo, it's an ancient maritime route around our seas that made them into our trade items back then. So this is the link that connects Borneo to the world. But now, beads is not just like an art form or trade, not just an art form. It has turned, Borneo beads has turned into a platform for artisans, scholars, researchers, and producers of beads to exchange and learn from each other. And we can see this progress from the first conference 10 years ago until it's the sixth one. The latest one was in the 2019. It was such a big progressive development in the Borneo Beads platform for the practitioners and enthusiasts like myself. And this gathering of knowledge sharing was what made it possible for me to explore Borneo beads. So it's a collective world history and heritage. It's the link that connects Borneo to the world. So I'm going to share a few photos of the first time that I was exposed to beads and its value in this conference. In this photo here, we can see some beaded Peranakan shoes, some Lawas beads, clay beads from Sarawak, and in the center, that's the African glass trade beads, and in the side is a collection of classic rungus beads. Yeah, besides things for sale, I was also checking out the fashion. Everybody was wearing their own collections. So these three photos here show those are really huge amber beads. And in the center, that's also the classic rungus beads with the dalai seeds and the sulo, the shell discs that ends right here at the neck. And a collection of glass beads. Yeah, after returning from Sarawak with this new knowledge, going back to Sabah, I worked together with the Sabah Museum, being invited to share my beads collection and my work. And back home, also, I learned much more about what is heritage arts and how it holds value to our society today. So in this photo here, it's my beads and I, we went to the Sabah Museum gathering with other beaders, and there's two from Keningau and Kudat, and with the Sabah Museum director that was very encouraging and sharing a lot of her knowledge too. And I get the chance to see a collection of heirloom beads, as you see in the four pictures on the right. That's the one on the pink mat, that's the Murut beads from Keningau. And then the one with the Bedoa style, that's the rungus beads from Kudat. The bright orange and yellow, that's Lundaya beads from Lawas. And right at the end, those are Lotut Karo beads from Tuaran. So from a lot of different villages and tribes, they have distinct ways of costume heritage. That shows their identity. And this style has been passed down and also quite dynamic throughout the generation, because each generation, the fashion or the beads that are available in our markets, they change. So our fashion too, it changes. Okay. Okay, and working with the Sabah Museum, they also publish Sabah Society journals, and usually references on Borneo beads as cultural heritage can be found in writings, but my contribution to the journal is my poetry. So this is one of my earliest poetry with my self-portrait that I shared. And thousands of them were buried in beads, the secret passage the beads will give. They may be small now, small thoughts and small things. In time, they grow old, just like any human beings. Thousands of beads on many untied strings. Pick them up, put them on, feel the presence it brings. A present, a gift, a tradition that sings. Old songs forgotten, but never ending. So that was my journey into beads. Yeah, so before we start the first session, that was a little bit of background, how I started to explore Borneo beads. It was from a conference and a book, and this information and this knowledge is easily accessible if you find the right channels. These NGOs are contactable online, and yeah, and I hope after this class, if anybody who is more interested to explore Borneo beadworks, you can easily get your references from Sabah and Sarawak. Okay, so Borneo beads, cultural heritage and contemporary practice. These are two opposite side of sentences. And in this session, I will share about my own process, learning about my cultural heritage from my mother. My mother is a Lotud from Tuaran, and my father is a Tindal from Kadamayan, and they both share a little bit of knowledge that they know to me, and the rest I have to explore and learn by myself. So this is the picture here. It's a picture that I want to share of a lot of cultural heritage that maybe most of the people don't know. I mean, these words are not in our common vocabulary use, like Komburongo, Karo, and Momolian. So Komburongo and Karo are names of the beads that we have. The necklace ensemble is the Karo, and the hanging rhizomes on the arm you see in the picture, that is the Komburongo. And also in her hand you will see many brass bells too, because these are the costume worn by the high priestesses of the Lotud when they conduct our traditional ritual ceremonies. And these rituals are called, this way of life are called Momolian. And in the black and white picture, you can see a circle of ladies. They're chanting prayers to the land, either to compensate for sickness in health or in wealth. Okay, so that is Komburongo Karo beads and the Momolian ritual. And here we can see the next picture here is how I identified our own family heirloom beads. And when we say heirloom beads, these are very precious things in the family, kept mostly by the women in the family. I like to tell others that the beads are so precious that my grandmother, she keeps her money under her pillow, but she keeps her beads in the bank. So, and the picture here is during my cousin's wedding, and she gets to wear the heirloom beads. And with my grandmother's permission, I started to document one by one, deconstruct and restring it again. Because after many years and many generations, the bead string gets worn out. This is not a problem. We can always restring them back again. Just don't lose the beads, because the antique beads are very precious. Because the ways of making beads today are different than it was back then, and also materials of today is also more is different than back then. The color pigments in glass and the drilled holes in stones. So after identifying the beads and documenting them and creating my own for the karo, I also explored the komburongo. The komburongo that you see worn on the arms of the priestesses. Instead of that fashion, I turned it into a necklace instead, but it carries the same spiritual meaning. So here, this picture here is my late great grandmother's komburongo. It is more than 100 years old, and it is in my safekeeping still. And the picture at the next picture is my new Acarus calamus. This is the Latin name for the scientific name of the plant. So I call it Acarus calamus, and I turn it into a necklace. So you can see the karo and komburongo went through a different picture in my generation and in my grandmother's. It's different. And here is trying to be inspired by the Momolian ritual. It was never a ritual that I learned. Because in my parents' generations, a lot of the Lotut community have already converted to new religions like Christianity and Islam. But we still know about our Momolian rituals, because going back home to the village, we will always see those who are still practicing and still respect and would like to learn what we have missed out before this. So Momolian rituals is about how to get together and share the spirit of healing. And I interpreted this with my own practice by making beads, because when we are beading together, that is also a healing therapy. It's very therapeutic. And also dance as a movement together is also a therapeutic healing. So here it's inspired by the traditional Momolian ritual. It's a contemporary dance and poetry recital. So this is the direction of exploration that we will go through today. Okay, now we are moving into talking about the contemporary art exhibitions. Before this, I shared about the cultural heritage part of Borneo beads that I have explored, which is the costume heritage and the rituals that are being practiced by my own communities. But in contemporary art exhibitions, I have the opportunity to explore further this topic. And today I will share 3 past exhibitions that I have participated, which is the titled Cultural Revival, Sogit, and Fabrication. And you can see they go in progressive years from 2013 until 2018. So this is the process how explored from traditional arts going into the contemporary art world. Okay, so in traditional arts, beads as symbolism is what we practice daily as our spiritual belief. But in contemporary art, we can add on another dimension to this practice, which is to relate these traditional practices with the current issues of our time. So for my first piece, Cultural Revival, I made an effort to introduce traditional elements in the contemporary art scene in Sabah, which are mostly with painters, prints, photographs. And then in Sogit, it's interacting knowledge of customary law and conflict resolution in a bigger demographic, which is Southeast Asia. And in fabrication, I get to address the topic of decolonization and marginalized communities in Malaysia. But this seems like very big topics, but they're actually current issues, and they're all different issues, depends on different demographics and regions. And coming from Borneo, coming from Sabah, being in the middle of bordering 4 countries like Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, and also the Philippines, we the generation of today have a lot of social conflicts and also identity. Okay, let's look at some pictures of these contemporary artworks. So this was my first piece in 2013. It's my debut to exhibit in my city, and I titled this piece "Cultural Revival" because of my intention to introduce the traditional elements among the modern arts. Like you see in the gallery here, most of the arts are hung on the wall, and I made my own beads from upcycled fabric and did a little bit of embroidery and patchwork, these things that you see in traditional costumes, but in a more non-conservative way. So I was very lucky too, because it was the same year, it was the 2013 was also the same year where Sabah had our first building for Sabah Art Gallery. Balai Seni Sabah was also in 2013. And my debut as an artist in the city coincides with this year, and Cultural Revival, this piece now is part of the Sabah Art Gallery collection. Okay, good memories. Now in 2015, Sogit. Okay, this exhibit was part of a commissioned work. It was also my first time being invited to a bigger group exhibit. This was curated by Harold Egan Eswar, and it's commissioned by the Japan Foundation. And the title for this group exhibition is Being Mafilindo. So for those who are not familiar with this term Mafilindo, it can see it's written in one of the beads there. Being Mafilindo is the combination of Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. So it is an imaginary political term of combining all the Southeast Asia islands into one entity. But this is also the feel, especially in Sabah, being Sabahans and being in the middle of these 3 countries. This is a topic that is very close to our hearts. And with the current instability in political situations, usually there is very high xenophobia in our society when we talk about foreigners or people who cross across the borders from our countries. And here I take the opportunity to use beads as a medium to collaborate with a local pottery factory not far from Tuaran, and to make giant clay beads that size like flower pots. And I decided to turn that exhibit into a more interactive installation where these blank beads are put out for 1 month, and I left some markers and paints there. And after 1 month, everybody get a chance to write their own feelings, their own thoughts of this topic Mafilindo. the combination of Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia as an identity. And I was very happy that my intention to use beads as a medium was also to introduce a way of conflict resolution that we have in our indigenous communities, which is called sogit. Sogit in Dusun language means cold or cool down. So to compensate or to cool down heated matters, we need to sogit to compensate. So to compensate most of the negative energy from this term, by writing down our own feelings and sharing them out with others, it makes it a more collective effort to find resolution to our conflicts. Okay, so this is the third one, fabrication. Yeah, from the pictures here, you can see fabrication is also, I was making my own beads by rolling old upcycled clothes, by cutting them up and rolling them into beads. And fabrication in 2018 was also my first exhibit in Kuala Lumpur, outside of my city, Sabah, by Project Dialogue in Kuala Lumpur. The title of the exhibition was Marata Suara, where the NGO works with local artists to address sections of marginalized communities in Malaysia. So this opportunity to exhibit together with friends in Kuala Lumpur also get me excited to share the East Malaysian side of stories when we talk about marginalization in this country, coming from the eastern side of the country. The double discrimination should be addressed this way. Yeah, and also the topic of Malaysia is also very much in our identity as Sabahans, to address decolonization or having our own freedom and our autonomy. So this is the exhibition that shows how the beaded curtains are covering the scrolls from Sabah and Sarawak, and at the back you can see the picture of the Queen. So yeah, quite heavy topics there. But what I was trying to explore with Borneo beads in the contemporary art scene was to use it as a medium to tell stories that maybe is not being voiced out before, or maybe people just don't know, because indigenous communities, we have stories that are not taught in the mainstream media. So using beads as a way to pass down this knowledge and stories was a very interesting exploration for me, and I was happy to get that opportunity. So that was the first session, just talking about beads and cultural, the heritage part of it, and how it has been explored in the contemporary art practice. And a little bit to summarize what I shared, I was ranting on a little bit there, identifying with our own identity and heritage. And because beads as a part of symbolism, so when we identify with our own identities, it doesn't mean that we have to come from certain tribes, certain places, or certain countries. Identity and the awareness of symbolism is also, it's very personal instead of communal. And identifying with this symbolism, we should also be aware of the adaptation of the adaptation process and practice. You know, what makes it different than before and what can make it different later on, you know. The process is very important. I find cultural work very dynamic. It's not static. So it's not the same story each generation. It always changes. That's what makes it so fun and interesting. And also the difference between heritage arts and contemporary art. My experience exploring in both different platforms, they're not the same, is beads and symbolism has been our traditional practice. This is nothing new, to use beads as a medium and put it on you. But beads and symbolism and adapting it to current issues, this is something very, the possibility is endless, because there are so many things that we can address with through beads and stories. Okay. I would like this class to be more interactive. And before we go to the practical side of things, we'll be starting to show you all my beads collection that I have here. I must show you a little bit. Oh, okay, where is it? Like all this, you know. Okay, before we go to the second part of things,
I think we want to open the floor to questions, yeah? Okay, thank you so much, Eleanor, for such an informative and in-depth sharing. I myself have quite a few questions to ask, but before I start, I'd just like to open the floor up for questions. If anyone is interested to ask Eleanor live, you know, we can just spotlight you and you can ask your questions straight away. You can just raise your hands. I think we have someone here.
okay, yay!
Don't be shy, everyone. Okay. Melody Ann. Hello. Hi. Okay, I think just to kick off, I just want to ask, how much has the process differed in terms of making the beads? You did mention in the beginning of the slides that, you know, in making the beads back then and now, there has been a lot of changes in that. So
Yeah, also because of technology. The same like food. Today there are many easy foods to find. It's easily available in packets because of the invention of machines to produce them easily. Same like beads. Before the invention of the drill that makes the holes. So to make a hole through, for example, one of the collectible beads is like this carnelian spindle. You see, you know, like imagine without a drill, the old drill, they had to do tuck 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 and then tuck 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 like this to make the. But with today's technology, maybe there's some supersonic silent drill and can make thousands of this. But it doesn't. For the value between new beads and old beads, I find that it's a little bit overrated, all the antique beads, and everybody try to get them, and only the rich people get to acquire them, and make the lesser income just have it. Instead of a heritage, they will turn it into some sort of common commodity for sale, because the value of antique beads is being put too high. But any new beads, I mean, it's new today. In 50 years, it's old. You just have to keep your collection, and then or make sure they go to the right person when you're not around anymore. And
I found it very interesting that your grandmother keeps her beads in the bank.
yeah.
It shows how, you know, how valuable these heirlooms are.
Yeah, and it also shows the different society that we live today, like to have security over possessions with CCTV and banks, and it's also different. Before this, most of the beads mm, are kept with each individual keeps their own, but in my family it keeps in a group. It's easier that way. So usually it gets lost. The collection will not be intact if it goes to everybody. Yeah. So I hope I will be responsible enough to take care of them.
Okay. Do we have anyone else who would like to ask any questions? Just feel free to raise your hand and open your mic. Okay, we have a question from Hui Ting Chia. Hui Ting, do you want to turn on your mic? Quite an interesting question. Oh, okay, so she can't turn on her mic. So her question is, do the beads relate to dreams similar to different art forms like Pua Kumbu? Is there any correlation to dream symbolism and also the beads? Yeah.
Mm. Mm, there are stories of beads and dreams, even my own, where I also relate them to stories. And later on in the next session, in bead stringing and poetry writing, we can explore about these dreams or our subconscious that relates to these small tangible things. What there was a research I read before on beads and dreams. I cannot recall the paper, but what I learned from this knowledge about beads and dreams is beads as a medium itself. It's very tangible. It's something that you can touch, you can feel. So that is why in all religions there is the meditation prayer beads. Everybody they have this to keep our prayers, thoughts, or dreams, the subconscious part of us, and to hold something tangible. It somehow feels real. So beads to call and answer dreams. There is also this belief, like earlier on in the slides I shared about the Lotud heritage of beads Komburongo, where I still keep my great grandmother's 100-year-old beads. These are used during rituals because during the collective process of healing, of chanting around the circle, during this collective process of healing, the scent, the smell from Komburongo, because it is a plant, it is a rhizome with a good smell, looks a little bit like looks a little bit like ginger. Melayu cakap dia macam cekur. In Malay, they call it something like cekur, very nice smell. And most of the healing process that what we can see in the picture is just the shape of a circle, women together wearing the paraphernalias. But what we cannot see is how this Komburongo paraphernalia, the beads that we use, and when the scent is released in the air, that signifies that the healing process is in a good progress, because there is a answer from the other realm, the unconscious side.
And how is the plant used? Is it just placed, or how is the plant is part of the symbolism?
Yeah, after harvesting the rhizome, then you just chop it up. That's why it turns chopped up like this.
And you just leave it out.
You just string it through a rattan string to pierce through them when it's still moist and fresh, and then leave them to dry. Because once they're dried, it's not easy to drill the hole.
Yeah.
To turn it into a bead. So it's turned into a bead by when it's harvested fresh and then dried. Yeah, there's Komburongo is the closest answer that I can get to the question where the beads relate to dreams, similar to how the story of Puakumbu patterns also relate to dreams. I mean,
that's a very insightful answer. I would just want to, there's also a follow-up question from Hui Ting before I move on, about if there's any, yes, okay. So is there any symbolism in terms of how different tribes can trace their roots based on the type of beads that are created?
Yes, I believe.
Sorry.
Yeah, I believe in identifying beads, and ask them what the name is. So usually, if it's a tribe that has been practicing it for a long time, they still use it with the same trade name. You know, like for example, again, I like to use the red carnelian spindle because in the Borneo beads book, I find it is the most royal looking beads, and we call it akik. You know, the dusun, the rugus, we call it akik. And I found out also the tribes in Philippines also call it, some southern island in Philippines also call it with the same name. And this is the story of stone beads. So this goes back again when we talk about symbolism, which we will speak of more later. When we speak about symbolism, not just the color of the bead, but the type. You know, if it's a stone, usually healing stone. In my village, my mother's village, this stone is known to cure snake bite. So it's like it's something that you carry also with you to the forest, and if you get a snake bite, you just put on it. But I've never tried it before, and I prefer to maybe use a proper medicine instead of just store-bought bead. And if it's and another indicator of tribes to identify tribes where they come from, because me now being in north of Thailand, because I had identified with some heritage beads here, and also the music instrument. We will save this story for another class, but the traditional instrument and the traditional beads here in northern Thailand is also similar to the what they call hill tribes here. Is also similar to the northern part of Borneo, where I come from, which is also hilly side of the place. The location is hilly and mountainous and with rivers. Is the dalai seeds, the lacrima joybi, job steers. It's quite popular. I think we see this a lot in our beadworks. Also used by the Orang Asli, also used in Sarawak and Sabah, and also used here in the northern side of Thailand. So I find that the indicator of these beads is not about whether you come from Sabah, Sarawak, or Thailand, but the indicator is you come from a community that still holds on to such an old knowledge, because This is the grain that we used to eat before we start to plant rice. Before rice becomes the food, there's a rice god, rice festival, rice this, rice that. But before we learn how to become farmers or cultivating the rice, this was one of the grains that is edible, and but we don't eat it anymore because now we eat rice. So it's more about not coming from which tribe, place, or location, but it's about coming from community that still holds this knowledge, because this knowledge that is still being held by indigenous communities, especially knowledge on seeds and roots and food and medicine, the knowledge holders of this heritage are usually very old old practitioners of things, like they also have the same old instrument that we have in Borneo, so we can see how beads or these heritage arts can be an indicator of communities with very important knowledge that they have kept and they want to share.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing,
Yeah.
Eleanor. I think we have a lot of even follow-up answers from people sharing from their different cultures as well. We have Candy Method who mentioned, to add on what Eleanor mentioned about dreams, in the Bidayo culture, some beads, they will get the spirits from their dreams to guide them in the dreams, where they can get some some place in the jungle as a gift and will be used in ritual ceremonies such as gawai. Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Melody, do you want to start your video? She's quite a few questions to ask you actually. Hi,
Hello.
Melody. I think everyone's a bit shy today. Don't worry, you can just on your audio.
Hi, Eleanor.
Hi.
Hi, Melody.
Yeah.
Okay, Melody, go ahead.
Actually, my question is inside the box already.
You can just read it out
Yeah,
loud.
I asked whether Miss Eleanor got the YouTube as a reference if I want, because all this time I'm so interested about the beads, and sometimes I don't know how to make a drill one, and then I wondering what is the material Eleanor make the beads, what from what source he make, is it from I don't know. Maybe Eleanor can tell me.
Today we will, after this first session, our next session, we will talk about beads and their sources and the symbolism and meanings we can put to them. But Melody, I use quite a lot of different kinds of beads, from seeds to roots, wood, shell, clay, bone, metal, glass. The fact that there is so much variety and diversity in beads is why I want to show them all instead of just using just one kind. So this we will explore further in the second session, where we will talk about beads art and also writing about them, the meaning, and how all this diversity and variety can be put together and function themselves in their best ways.
So Melodies, just stay tuned for the next session, yeah? Okay, we have a question from Kian Bu. Kian Bu, do you want to unmute your mic and ask Eleanor your question? Okay, I'll just read it out first. Okay, hi Eleanor, do you have any beadwork designed for men or designed by men? could you please comment a bit on beadwork in relation to masculinity and femininity? Thank you.
Oh yeah, I get this. I get this a lot of these questions too. Sometimes during my workshop, some even reject and say it's like, oh, some men will even reject and say it's a girl thing to make these beads. But once we understand beads and symbolism, and we can make our own, I'm sure you can design any style of beads we want, whether it's feminine, masculine. I think it's quite universal. But usually for men, when they would like to get a drink from me, because of physique, compared to women, we have a more graceful anatomy, and men they are more muscular, especially this side. So necklaces with bigger size beads is more to the eye is more proportionate to men rather than wearing something small. It's also like fashion for like women. We can wear anything and look nice because we have beautiful bodies. But for men, they need maybe a shirt, to complement the physique. So masculinity is not is also about the physique. Um, and also beads and symbolism. Later we will explore more about it. There are many beads that signifies masculinity. If it talks about like strength uh, or power, or for me, when I think of masculinity, I straight away think of balance, because even for females, we have a little bit of masculine side. And in some designs also, I like to put say a little bit of a strong element inside, would be like a bigger bead, or something strong like bone, because bone symbolizes also uh, the relation to the masculine and feminine duties in nature, where one hunts and one takes water. It's the balance to work together. So usually when say men, oh, hunting, and when say women, oh, river, bring back water. So bone beads is also very, how you say, very significant, I think, for design for men. And also when we see when we talk about beads design, usually it's also relating to tribal designs. And in tribal designs, most of the old beads are made out of natural things, like shells. Like the oldest bead in the world is recorded, and it was recorded, found in southern France. Is more than 40,000 years old, and made out of natural things. So it is just very natural if the man's duty to go hunting, and they catch some game, and they are, they're bone beads, or you can also see this in the tribal fashion sense.
Hey.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna ask the last question before we move on to the second part. It's from Erica Skatson, who's coming to us from the US actually. Regarding old beads, what is your opinion about collectors from foreign countries buying beads from antique stores, taking these heirlooms out of the country, probably permanently? She just wants to get your views on that.
Yeah. I think during this time, this generation, or during this time of trade, where it is not just the trade of beads that is not fair, but other trades too, you know, in natural resources, in fossil fuel, not just the trade in beads that the world is not fair now, but just the same title, like I get to, in one of my exhibits, I get to address the issue of decolonization. Use the word colonization, use the word decolonization, I find is more empowering than always claim to be victims of as third world countries today because of colonization. So this process of decolonizing ourselves from things that is taking away the power for us to keep our own cultural heritage, not just beads, but our natural heritage, like our forest and land. We also have difficulty to keep that because the world looks at these heritage things as commodity, not as duty. You know? For the indigenous communities, we take care of our cultural heritage and natural heritage because we inherit the duty that comes with it. It is just very unfortunate today it is seen as a commodity. And coming from a third world country, this is a very disempowering feeling to feel helpless towards a system that has colonization in Sabah. It started in 1881. I mean, in America, it's been 500 years. Even until today, there is no reciprocity. You know, so I thank you for asking this question because I think this is the questions that should be asked by those who are privileged and fortunate to have these commodities in their hands. These are cultural heritage that comes from natural heritage of communities that are having a lot of trouble to keep up with the big job of preserving these heritage. These are jobs of governments and big funds projects, but it's being done by the communities themselves. So I hope there will be more questions like this coming from. We can use Borneo Beats as a platform to address bigger issues, not just aesthetics and monetary, but how we can. It can be also educational. How can we work together to make it better?
And I think it's something you bring up in your artworks and in your exhibitions as well,
Yes.
merging these social issues into, merely taking it a step further from merely just aesthetics.
Yes, this is the exploration that I am still going through, and I am still learning. Yeah.
Okay, so awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the next session, part 2. Everyone, please keep your questions coming. Please don't be shy. Like, you can turn on your mics and ask your questions directly after our second session. So I won't take up too much of Eleanor's time now. So let's just move on to the next session.
Okay, so the second session is art and literature. This is after we learned. The first part was about Borneo beads, about the cultural heritage and the contemporary practice, and understanding it as a medium of symbolism. So for this second session, it's more about looking at these bead strings and poetry writing. So before, this is an exhibit, another exhibit of mine that I would like to share. And this exhibit came with a poetry that meant that was very close to my heart because this beads installation is a collaboration with the Sabah Museum to make a sulap. As you can see, a sulap is this mini bamboo hut you can see in the picture. It's sulap means like a farmer's hut in the Dusun language. So in this, it's a collaboration to make bead sulap, 99 bead strings in the sulap, and it's a tribute to Tina Rima. Now, Tina Rima, she donated her land to Sabahan artists so that we can turn it into a small art center or use that space for the development of the arts in Sabah. Tina Rima was born in 1917 in the UK and came to Borneo in 1952 to serve as a teacher. And she never left. She stayed until her last breath in 2017. It's like 2 months before her 100th birthday. But during her 99th birthday, we managed to launch the Tamparuli Living Arts Center in Sabah. It's one of the first artist residencies. As I shared earlier, Sabah only had our art gallery in 2013. And then since the progression of art is happening in the state, and we are also trying to establish art residencies outside of the city. And in 2016, during the late Tina Rima's 99th birthday, we launched the center that she has been planning and dreaming of to have. And and this poetry is a tribute for her. So here it's 99 beats of the old ancient gong. Heart beats so strong, it's older than this song. 99 beats with names of their own. Old names forgotten because they've been there too long. 99 strings hung up on the wall. All strings have a meaning and story to be told. For you, 99 years is never too old to share with us your spirit, your land, and your soul. So when we talk about 99 beads, this is also a beads collection that I want to share. In the beads collection, this is where we also have our inventory. If we don't have a proper beads inventory to start our beadwork, it will look like this. It will look like a big mess. And it's not fun to make beadsworks when things are not in order. And beadworks, with one by one with the hand, it's not like I wish it is if there is an AI computer that can reset this database every time I finish. It's not possible. If it's a computer, you just click a button and everything goes back to its own homes, place, and base. But for beads, you have to do it one by one with your hands. Okay, so from our collection, inventory, and selection, before we go more deeper into this symbolism and poetry and beads. For this class, just separate to two categories, which is elements and colors. We had a question just now from Melody, if I'm not mistaken, about what types of beads that that we use, and also are they real or fake or genuine, and also the question about antique beads and the value of it. I think we all put our own value to our beads, because only we know what we make into a string. This is when we take the exploration a little bit further, where we want to decide to make our own strings. Usually knowledge gathering, or just knowing the theories of heritage and the meaning, but not doing it, the job is not done. Okay, for the 7 elements, seeds and roots, wooden shells, clay, bone, metal, glass, stones, and the 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Actually, they are more, this can be more elaborated, but for this class, we're only going to use these 2. So for, okay, this is how the chart will look like when we talk about the 7 elements and 7 colors. But I've also prepared for each slide, so we can see a little bit of picture. And so the beads and symbolism, the process of making the string is when we can have that reflection. Symbolism means, what does it symbolize with? What is it reflecting to you? And then beads as a form of art is just an expression to put it on you, or to give it as a gift, or to hang it on the wall. So expression and reflection is I think for me is a very therapeutic process. When we are beading one by one, the process, it's very mindful, and it's also a form where you have no choice but to finish your string, and then you are in this mode of focus that is very much centered to yourself. So expression and reflection. Now let's look at the first element, seeds and roots. There are 7 elements there. Okay. For the next slide, expression and reflection. Okay, so for seeds and roots, this is my favorite. My favorite category, because in this picture here you will see dalai seeds and komburongo roots. So these are the 2 beads that I always carry with me, and I always try to include them in the strings that I make, because these are also what we call the heritage beads, because we're also using it as our food and medicine. So that's dalai and komburongo. You can see it in the picture. And because in symbolism, it's always good to have a balanced, spread out categories of symbols. So to create something complete, it's nice to have a metaphor of the tree. So to start something, to plant something, to remember something, to be grounded of something. So our food and medicine is the first thing that that we should keep, the knowledge that we should always have. So that's biji dalai and akar komburongo, the dalai seeds and the komburongo roots. The dalai seeds is a very the dalai seeds, they are quite a universal seed. I found out they have a lot of names. In here in Thailand, they're called duai, and we call it dalai. And the scientific name of it is Qua lacrima joybi. And the general name, I think it's Job's tears. But I always call it dalai. And if and dalai and komburongo, the seeds and roots are my two main beads that I always introduce, because when people ask me, oh, Borneo beads, what are Borneo beads? And they will see all this collection that I have, and then they will ask me if these are all from Borneo, and I say, I am from Borneo, but this is my collection, and my collection comes from all around the world. And beads today, it comes from one hand to another, and with all this technology that we have today, replicas of the old are also very easily made. So, okay, seeds and roots, the main beads that I always use. And then there's wood and shells. If the seeds and roots represent our food and medicine, wood and shells, it represent our land and our sea. And coming from Borneo, this is a very tanah dan air, yeah. In Borneo, our land and our seas, we carry many stories, and the stories that we get comes from our own communities and also our neighboring villages around the land. So there's always a story about migration, because we're surrounded by so many different seas. And the story of land migration too, because we have a lot of hills and rivers and valleys. So always to symbolize tanah and air, land and sea, it's a common thing to be repeated in the story. So in the beads, it's represented through wood and shells, because wood come from our trees and shell come from the sea. Okay, in this picture here, the four little bowls in the middle is in my collection. Those are the common shell beads and wood beads that you can get in the supply store. But the two pictures that are both at the end, the white beads that you see, those are shell beads, but they are the collectible ostrich shell beads. Wow, these are quite rare now. Could be expensive too, but I don't have that in my collection. And then at the other end here is another collectible wood bead, which they call pumtek beads. These are made by the Chin in Burma. Pumtek beads, this one I have in my collection. Somewhere here. Pumtek beads, yeah. Pumtek beads. So pumtek beads are wood beads, wood that is so old it has turned into stone. It's called petrified wood beads, and it's from Burma. So in beads, there are also common beads and collectible beads. The ones that we use for our workshop is the one that is easily found, like shell discs and factory-made wooden beads. But the collectible ones will be like what we see in the picture, like ostrich shell and petrified wood. These are also available. Okay, so for the next category, so we had seeds and roots, wood and shells, and then now clay. Oh, clay beads are also very, very special, because it's part of my collection too. These are very distinctively Borneo beads, not just Borneo beads, but the new progressive Borneo beads that has not only got better productions, better looking beads, but more orders throughout the years. And it has also empowered cottage industries and craftswomen in the rural areas to produce such beautiful beads. Like it's made out of clay, and clay that they use is the soil that's from the river. These are made in Lawas by the Lundaye community in Long Tuma. So it's very beautiful, and the process of preparing the soil into clay, rolling them, putting them in the kiln, painting them is a big process, and it's a collective work done by the women in the rural village. So these are very beautiful clay beads. So just now was clay, now it's bone. So clay symbolizes the ground that we stand on. Bone symbolizes the living creatures, because we ourselves as human, we have bones too. So the living creatures that we see around us, to be aware of other people and animals. And the ones and the picture we see here, the one on the long stretch, is the beads that we have in our collection, in our workshop. It is a carved bone, dyed bone, painted bone, and in the end you can see those are actually fish vertebra beads. Tulang ikan ya, tulang belakang, fish vertebra beads. And at the side is also my favorite collectible skull beads, made out of yak bone from Nepal. So these are also types of bone beads that can be used. And we were talking something about bone beads earlier, when a gentleman was asking about the masculine design of beads. And for beads and symbolism, bone, it's not the living creatures that we see, and also the role of masculinity in tribal fashion, where they are wearing all these bones because they are the ones that have the job to go hunting. So it's also many ways that we can relate beads with symbolism, because they're such little things, but they can bring big meanings. Okay, so we have seeds and roots, wood and shell, clay, bone, now stones. Okay, stones, there are many stone bead pictures to show, but for this slide, I share my favorite stones, the one that I have in my collection that I use. Again, you can see the carnelian spindle there, the ake, and it's so funny how it gets the name ake too. Excuse me, I found out that carnelian is part of the red agate that does not have the band around the stone. So it's actually red agate. So when it is being traded, sometimes it's not being called carnelian, but it is sold as agate. And because of the pronunciation of agate and the local tongue that we have, so it's being, instead of saying agate, we said ake. So it turned out to be Manik ake until today. This is just my theory because I found out the name, the local name, and I also found out the metaphysical properties of the stone and relate these two together. So that's my favorite red stone, the ake, the carnelian, because this is what we will see in a lot of the old heirloom beads, strings, especially the spindles, because it wasn't easy to make a long bead before, to drill the hole between. And then in the center there is and there's two plastic bowls with beads. In the center, that's with the black and white color beads, are my favorite, lava rocks and moonstones. So it balanced between black and white, and also moonstones, the moon in the sky, and lava rocks, the heat from the ground. So this black and white moonstone and lava rocks, just from the name, and also the texture and the color, it black and white is a very strong beads to use in designs because they are very prominent to seen among the colors. And then at the end there is a group of beads with orange and red and green a little bit. These are all Burmese jade beads. I'm very lucky to be here in North Thailand, where the markets are closer to Burma, and the markets here, they have a lot of jade beads, which would cost a lot of money back home, but because it's far away. But here it is quite affordable. So beads also vary because of location. What is expensive here could be cheap back home, and what was expensive back home could be cheaper here. Beads as an item of trade has always have this kind of price value where to acquire them, you need to meet the right market or the right trader. And yeah, and I put a little bit another picture right at the end there with other stone chip beads. It's in the different shape. Okay, after stones, then we have metal. If stones represent the, they're old fossils from around the world with metaphysical properties. I mean the science behind how these stone beads we have is also very interesting, because old fossils have the same components of living things of today. So that's why we relate to the metaphysical properties of stones. And also metal beads. So metal beads symbolize metal and glass beads both symbolize this element of fire, because this is how they are made. Sometimes in symbolism, there's always there's a element of earth, water, wind, fire. So always the ones that need element of fire, I will propose metal and glass beads, because these are how they are made. And it's also a symbol of human invention, how smart humankind is to be able to make all these metal sculptures and things, and glass blowing techniques. And this so metal and glass is also a symbolism of technology and human. So, and it's forged with fire, and metal is it's known as an element for its strong durability, steel. So again, when was asking the question about what beads are masculine for men, I also like to recommend metal to show like the strength of and durability. And mostly in the traditional societies, those who forge to make metal things like knives, or the silversmiths or the metal workers in a community are men. Okay, in this picture here, I share some, right at the end, those are beautiful silver hill tribe beads that are also available here in Thailand. Hill tribe, yeah, those are hill tribe silver beads, and the rest, the ones in a row, are beads that are in my collection, mostly glass spaces and brass inlaid beads from Nepal. We just missed the pictures just now. Okay, now before it was metal, and now it's glass. So I choose the word melted here. If anybody could help me, what is the more suitable term of working with glass? Like working with metal is forging with fire. So glass, I put here melted with fire and have high fragility. This is the opposite of metal, yeah. Metal, it's durability, steel, and glass, even though it's made and molded with fire, but it is very fragile and it can break anytime. So I think glass and metal as elements to be put together is also creating a very symbolic balance, both, even though both are made, man-made technology and fire, and but one is very high and durable because it's meant and it's expected to be so, and one is very fragile and easily broken, and it's also expected to be that way. So we have you so that's 7 elements of 7 elements that we have there to use for the beads. And now it's the 7 colors, you know, 7 colors. I also like to play with colors, and it is since from the beginning. If you notice in my introduction slide, I had a rainbow necklace next to the subject text. So a rainbow has always been a color that I automatically being drawn to. This it never left me since I was a child. And working with beads and symbolism also makes me love the rainbow wheel or the rainbow order in more relatable way. And usually also in symbolism, the rainbow also represents the chakra of the body. You know, part of the healing is to be aware of the bodies and things that are stuck and what we feel that we cannot move on. So from here, these are the rainbow collection that we have at with our beads. So for red, start with red, and there is this the rainbow song that always gets stuck in my head, also sang from little girl, like red and orange, yellow and green, blue and indigo, the last one is violet. To make a rainbow song. So red brings the color of energy, yellow for strength, green for acceptance, blue for communication, indigo for intuition, purple for knowledge, and orange for sensuality. And all these can be symbolizes of how we want to design our strings, or what is the story that we want to tell. Okay, based on these 7 colors and 7 elements, okay, so that's about before we go to Borneo rainforest inspired poetry that we will make our bead strings based upon. Maybe we can have some question and answers about the symbolism charts and the types of beads. Maybe I left out some things that and I can still have a chance to talk about them now.
We have quite a lot of questions. Thank you so much for that sharing. Super in depth. We have quite a few questions for you actually. Okay, so to start off, we have a question from Suganti Mamaran. Suganti, do you want to turn on your mic to ask your question live? Come on, guys, don't be shy. Okay, so I think I'll just read out her question first. Can beads show a person's status in that particular society or tribe?
Yes, fashion has always been an indicator of social status in society. Like today, what we see commonly, you know, fashion like wearing an expensive watch or a diamond ring or like gold, you know, all this show that status of wealth. And back then, before there was money to buy all this and money and access to gold, diamonds, and expensive watches. Beads was also an item of trade, and mostly the ones that will get beads as way of payment for what they do or what they achieve is are the healers in the community, because every time there is a healing session, then the compensation would be a bead or something. We say pukado, we must pangaras, it must be something hard and cold, you know. I think sama, I think it's the same, the term of this something hard, something cold. If in Malay it's called pengeras, in Dusun we say pukodo. Kodo means the same keras, hard to eat. So this compensation or these ways of payment can be seen a lot. You can see the spiritual leaders of the community are the ones that have the best beads collection. If you go to Sabah Museum or Sarawak Museum, or even the Kalimantan Museum, I had the opportunity to go to Pontianak, Kalimantan. The bead section of the museum in Kalimantan is dedicated to the late priestess Tipung from Kayan Mandalam, because she gave her beads and to the museum, and she has a lot, you know. And she wasn't just a healer, she was also one of the musicians that could play the old jaw harp that is not being practiced anymore in that village there when I visited. Yeah, so I guess if you're a musician or a healer in the old days, you are the one with the
Higher currency.
higher currency, the one dapat banyak gaji. Different than today, where healing is mostly therapy that is free, and yeah, and also music is free now with all this MP3 and anybody can explore. But back then, so it's a good question when say beads show the wealth of society, but who are considered the rich and powerful in the society is also a different indicator today and back then. Like
Good
those
point of reflection is, I guess.
yeah, like yeah, back then when there was a money currency or this new way of trade, yeah, those who yeah, musicians and healers are the ones. And you can see the collection of the beads, especially the priestesses and healers of the society, because when they pass on, their collection is so important and they have contributed so much to the society that they are being remembered in the museum for their work, and also what they have is to be shown for many people to know and see. So yeah, thank you for asking that question.
Great question. Okay, we have Siling Tan. I'm just going to get her to ask a question live. Hi, Siling, how are you?
Hello, good morning, and thank you, Eleanor and Sarah, for this wonderful program. I'm a fan of beading too. I do wear a lot of bracelets and all that made of beads. And I just want to ask you something because I'm curious. I don't have any knowledge about the spiritual meaning of wearing certain beads. And recently I had these beads. It's actually a jade coral. And when I first got it, it was very dull. And after like wearing for more than a week, I can see the transformation of the coral became like more shining. And because I'm a lover of cats, and this is actually a figure of a cat carved, you know,
beautiful.
And it changes color. It becomes so shining. And I'm just curious, when you have this program at the time, I just said, you know, if somebody can tell me something, is that an exchange of positive energy or what? Because I realized I love wearing pearls, but every time I have experiment with a lot of pearls, when I wear them, it kind of wear off. It's just becomes smaller and smaller and it become very dull, even though when I'm wearing it on my ears without much touch. I like to wear things every day to see, you know, the connection of me with the beads or anything. So I can see that I am more, when I wear jade and coral, things like that, I see that there's transformation, but when I wear the pearl, it's just dissolved off. So maybe you can give me some information about the meaning of wearing certain beads that suits the person, or is there a healing energy between the the wearer and the materials that you are wearing? Thank you.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Interesting question.
Please excuse me for that.
Oh, okay. Where did you get the bracelet sealing? It's really nice.
I just got it from the Shopee, and when it first arrived, I was like, oh my God, is this plastic or what? I was like, it's so dull, but I just give it a try and say, since I bought it, and I just wear it, and it just changes after a week, and I was so surprised.
Oh, I am very, very happy to hear these kinds of stories. I've always believed in beads are tangible things, but I always believe in the intangible things that we cannot see. Especially when we talk about stones, and you're talking that what you have is coral, and sometimes you wear jade too. So the metaphysical properties of these stones are also I have not read so much about it, but for me it makes logic, because stones are old fossils, things that have been pressured for a long, long time ago, and then it created into this mineral. So if you and being aware of your creations, or what you wear on you, or what you have, just to be aware, like how you are aware with how the pearls are deteriorating, and the coral is shining. This is a very good reflection, and reflection. And it is common to wonder, like, oh, what is the meaning? What can it be? If And it's very funny, because coral and pearl, they come from the same element, the sea. But one is something very strong and fragile, because it's in it comes from a home, yeah. The pearl has a home, whereas coral is something very strong, that it is the home for others. It's the home for all the fish and creatures, So to see the positiveness, and I always see the positiveness in magical matters like this. The difference between a pearl that has grown up, or matured in a secure home, and the coral who grows wild and become the home for many other creatures, and to see that you are reacting towards the coral better, and it's shining. I think it's a very positive thing, that you react to something stronger in a positive way, which is you're more positive with the coral and it's shining, and with the pearl, which is also from the same environment, the sea, but it is very fragile, and it needs to live in a home and not so wild and free. I find that is the nice symbolism for this, because it's the first thing that comes to my mind when you say coral and pearl. Then I think of the sea, even with a little song in my head, under the sea, under the sea. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Sealing, thank you so much for your question. All right. Okay, moving on. We have a question from Ika. This is quite interesting. Do bead makers in general take into account these symbolisms and meanings in creating their work for sale? Or do they typically lean more to purely aesthetics or market trends in color?
I cannot speak for others, but for myself, it's for the symbolism I follow, and sometimes market trends I follow. There are many ways beads can go. It can go towards, the aesthetic part of it, and then it also can go to the monetary part of it. But beads can also be, which we shared in our previous the class before, in our contemporary practice. Beads, it's not just about the aesthetics, where and for monetary, the type of sales and beauty, but also the educational part of it. So as a bead maker, it depends on where I am bringing my beads. Like for today, I'm bringing my beads to an open arts class for a cultural development agency. So my beads today is about cultural heritage and how it can be shared and developed in a national platform like this, and we can explore it further. Maybe after this we can have like a new trend, Malaysia beads, instead of Borneo beads, and like Borneo beads, it's not just an art form. Now it has turned into a platform. So beads is a very much broader medium than purely talking about marketing and sales, and just aesthetics, just the beauty and the meaning behind it, and we can see this from a very expensive bead, commercialized, or the ones in the mainstream markets. These are what beads can also adapt to, like any other marketing scheme, to for symbolism, for like selling feng shui. There are many ways beads can be. But for today, as a bead maker, I am sharing my beads in the perspective of cultural heritage, and how beads as an art form has already progressed into a platform, and maybe this can be adapted to our progressive Malaysian culture. We can adopt Borneo beads, and make something new, especially now when we have the chance. I mean, we have before the beginning of the class, we shared a little bit about what Cendana is and what Art in the City is trying to do. It is exactly what I went through when I explored Borneo beads, which is to have a gathering of minds, which is the sharing of knowledge. And this is what I find bead makers should jump into, because we can always make our strings. We can always think of marketing or get support from customers, or our usual buyers.
And hopefully in the whole process of sharing your whole journey today, you could inspire a new generation of bead makers, and and having their own interpretations and stories.
I hope so. And the past 10 years of doing this, I have met many, those that I have encouraged, and those who also have encouraged me, and I hope there is a bigger community of these beads enthusiasts. Or hopefully after this class, those who have explored beads together today, maybe we can do a follow-up, make a little collective, or exploring Borneo beadworks. It's endless, and so many possibilities.
Okay, here's hoping to more future collaborations. I'm going to close off the Q&A with one last question. We're quite short on time because you still have the part 3 to cover. Maybe we should go follow up with the Q&A later. I'll just present the last portion.
Okay, can I have one last question before we talk about
great. Last question from Laura Jung. Do beads get consecrated cleansed before being used? Yeah, do beads get cleansed? Is there a ritual of it being cleansed before? You know.
For me, I have made it into a self-practice. For every full moon, I like to clean my beads because I I believe they're all special and they have the power to attract others, not just from their beauty, but what they mean. Once I talk about the seeds and roots, usually people go like, "Whoa!" So they're very attractive and sometimes need to mandi sebulan sekali, okay, once a month for full moon, and but not the. But I cleanse my strings though, not my beads collection. Maybe if I have one container, I will, but I have so many. I travel with 30 kilos because this is the maximum for international luggage.
Still quite heavy, 30 kilos.
Yeah, quite yeah, and it's not that I sell all of them,
Yeah.
it would be ideal if that happens, but just to have them with me, and then sometimes I get to trade them. Yeah, but just being with me, and I have things to do, things to share, and on lucky days I get to sell. um, it's good, but full moon, once a month I check on my strings and to in them, yeah. But it's good if you have especially stones, because among all the beads, some of the most expensive ones are the stones, compared to wood and shell. So if you have something, you paid a lot of money for something like precious stones, I think it's nice to always have them clean and displayed nice instead of in a dusty box.
Okay. So good tip for everyone. I'm going to move on to the third portion of the slides before we stop the session for the last portion of Q&A. So we're over time a little bit. It's almost 12. So thank you everyone for being so patient and sitting through the session. I'm going to move on to the third session. Okay.